Hey YouTube, JoyBoy here. So, chapter 870 of One Piece is out, so if you haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so, because I will be spoiling you. Now that you have, let's begin. Whew, man guys, my thoughts for how this arc may end just got kicked in the ballsack. The distribution of L's this chapter gave me, oh man, it hurts on both the inside and the outside. And so let's start off with this, and I'm a little disappointed, I'm not gonna lie. But it was handled in a way that I can accept and understand, although I wasn't really moved or greatly impacted by it. But the Vinsmokes did the 180 that many of you in the comments section had speculated for some time, and I never bought into. And I guess the reasoning can be broken down as simply as this. The Vinsmoke are extremely prideful, and to be in the debt of a rat, a commoner, somebody who isn't even worthy of their time, a complete failure, it appears that they cannot handle it, and that their pride overcomes any other emotion that they might have. So that we're left in a situation where the Vinsmokes are willing to fight for and defend the Straw Hats and Sanji and company, if only to not be in their debt. It's extremely hard for me to not be salty. Certainly the Vinsmokes don't want to be in the debt of the Straw Hats, but incidents such as Cosette, or their warmongering or their plans for the Germa, all of this would seemingly remain unchanged. This is merely short-term actions, and afterwards you would expect the Germa to go back being the kind of organization that Revujo says deserves to end. I feel like it's important that the Vinsmoke prize royalty and strength over nearly everything else. And in this chapter specifically, Sanji shits all over the concept of royalty and how he treats Judge. Judge does not act like a royal. So I'm honestly left scratching my head, like, is there going to be more development as the arc continues, or is this it? And so there's one little thing to add on to this, which is, I think this is a worthy speculation, a very worthy theory. But by the end of this chapter, right, it doesn't appear as though Ichiji is really in any way changed, and Oda made this extremely clear because Revujo got attacked and even Niji was concerned for her, and Ichiji said specifically stop, that, you know, if she's weak, then the weak deserve to fall. He then goes on to say that we must complete this mission, quote unquote. And this honestly reminds me of something Revujo said in the past, which is that Judge Vinsmoke has the ability to control his children. They're forced to follow his orders. So my real question here is Ichiji happy with what has transpired? Or is he secretly really mad but forced to cooperate? It's definitely a question. But anyway guys, aside from this reveal about the Vinsmoke, the other major thing that I feel like we actually gained from this chapter was perspective on Capone. And I think many people, if they weren't before, have now joined the Capone beige bandwagon. Because, you know, when he was, the alliance was initially formed, we learned a lot of bad things about him. Cuts the heads off of animals like horses, and, you know, tries to assassinate leaders of gang groups. But in this chapter we can see for sure, and this was hinted at beforehand as well, that Capone is quite a family man who cares a lot for his subordinates. And you know guys, when this arc initially began, I had two thoughts. One of which is that there's this theory that I really love, that all of the supernova will be present and assist in taking down Kaido. Because we have pretty much all the supernova already associated with Wano, from Zoro and Luffy and Law and Kid and Apu and Hawkins, Killer and X-Drake. So you're thinking, if the vast majority of the supernova are already going there, maybe the other ones will find their way. And that would include, or the ones left out right now are Rouge and Bonnie and Capone. And with the progression of the relationship and understanding of Capone's character, I can really see Capone actually tagging along with the Straw Hats to Wano. The exact circumstances which will lead to this is obviously very ambiguous, but I definitely think that Capone now is far more ally than not. Even though he does say in this particular chapter that he doesn't really care about the Straw Hats and everyone else that much, he's more concerned about his subordinates, and obviously by helping out everyone else, he's helping out his subordinates. But anyway, aside from these two things about Capone and the Vinsmokes, nothing really happened this chapter. We're kind of left in the same situation as we were at the end of last chapter, which kind of makes this this chapter as a whole feel like a tease, which at the end of the last chapter we're kind of left thinking, okay, well the Straw Hats are now forced to fight. How are they going to beat the Big Mom pirates? And so in this chapter we had a lot of talk about potentially escaping. Plans were made in which everyone was supposed to stay within Capone while Caesar basically flew off, and the Vinsmoke would defend them all the while. But this plan seems underdone even within this own chapter, because at the end, Sanji and Luffy decide to leave Capone's body, and this is made out to be a big deal. And so the plan was to run away without fighting, but now Sanji and Luffy for sure are going to be fighting, which means that Caesar will be leaving without them, which means that they will not be escaping. At least they won't be escaping immediately without at least a brief clash right now with the Big Mom pirates. But you know, this is why we love the Straw Hats. It's so interesting to me that both Luffy and Sanji were willing to sacrifice themselves in order to allow for their friends and their Nakama to escape. The Big Mom pirates are all big talk about not being able to reach Big Mom, and this chapter, they did. So it all comes back to this question, which people have been talking about since even before the Whole Cake Island arc. Can the Straw Hats plus any amount of allies actually beat the Big Mom pirates? I believe that this would only be possible if Luffy shows off Gear 5th. If Gear 5th gets introduced in this arc, which is supposedly not going to be much longer, then I can see it. But as Luffy is right now, there's nobody who is capable of taking on Big Mom. And so an interesting thing to note to this, which I was reminded about by Roger's Base recently, which is Igniter, one of my commenters who comments a lot with speculations that are really interesting, pointed out this pattern, which is that Gear 2nd was revealed in chapter 378, and then Gear 4th was revealed in chapter 783. And so 783, all of these numbers are the same, so people are wondering if something interesting in regards to Luffy's gears will happen in chapter 873. I personally am not a big fan of numbers-related theories, but it definitely gives us something to look forward to, and with this being essentially 3 chapters away, 71, 72, and 73, and the timing would make some sense for Luffy to have a showdown with Big Mom and reveal Gear 5th at that moment, if something like that is going to happen. But yeah guys, as far as my thoughts for how Whole Cake Island will end, for the most part, they're unchanged. The only real addition that I would make is that it doesn't really seem likely for the Straw Hats to fight the Vinsmoke at the end of the arc. Now, I said at the beginning of this video that I still see some potential in it because there seems to be unresolved issues still there, even if it's not going to be addressed immediately, but it just doesn't seem very likely. So my series of events, again, to reach the conclusion of Whole Cake Island is Big Mom's rage and everyone against Big Mom, including the Big Mom pirates. Either that or Gear 5th. I don't really see any other really persuasive idea. I keep saying Gear 5th, but really any substantial power gain for Luffy would work, whether it be Awakening or an alternative form of Gear 4th that is useful in some way. It doesn't just have to be Gear 5th. But we still got a lot of hanging plots left in Whole Cake Island. Things still need to happen, whether it be the Tamate Baku Box, the return of Peckham's, the return of Pound, Sanji's relationship with Pudding. All of these various things are still in play, so I think a lot of people are going to look at this chapter as a huge L for me taken, and although I definitely didn't think that Oda would just toss aside Sanji's conflict with the Vinsmoke, but as far as the entire sequence of events, nothing really has changed all that much, because we're left exactly where we were after last chapter. But I do want to point something out to you guys that I found very interesting, which is, you know, it's always been brought up throughout Whole Cake Island whether or not Big Mom would actually kill her own children. She's threatened Lola, but that's really the only time she's ever threatened one of her own family members. A lot of her family members just assume that if they mess up, then Big Mom would kill them. And so in this chapter, we can see her sort of rage at Chiffon for looking like Lola, but she had an opportunity to appear worse in our eyes by basically saying that she's going to kill Chiffon for having betrayed her, for having plotted against her and attempted to assassinate her. But that's not what Big Mom says, and what she actually says is really curious to me, and honestly, I think supports my ideas about how Big Mom perceives her own family. She says this specifically: so you're also an accomplice for this assassination. Don't think that you'll be able to eat snacks tomorrow. I cannot be the only one who think that this is a very weird response. Now, for one, Big Mom may think that denying snacks may be a circumstance far worse than death, but still an opportunity to showcase Big Mom at her worst, to really set her up as a true enemy. All Oda needed to do was basically say, I'm going to kill you, my own family, for attempting to assassinate me. But Oda didn't do that. I'm curious. Another interesting thing that I noticed from this chapter is that when the chapter first begins, Big Mom has her normal eyes, but she gets swirly eyes by the end of the chapter, specifically when she starts using her heavenly fire attack. Now, I don't know what the significance of this may or may not be, but I find it really, really interesting. So when she attacked, she had crazed eyes, but at the very beginning of the chapter where she says, Chiffon, you're not going to eat any snacks tomorrow, she had normal eyes. And, you know, obviously when she has swirly eyes, it's implied that she's sort of out of her mind. There's something here, I feel like. Another thing that I want to bring up is Revujo, and my god, she took Big Mom's attack in the face, and although she doesn't seem too okay with it, she still champed right through it. The Vinsmoke, we're about to see just how strong Germa and the Vinsmoke actually are. But anyway guys, that's all I really had to say. I thought that this was a good chapter. I think the defining moments of this chapter were really the turn of Judge Vinsmoke, and Luffy and Sanji both being unwilling to just run away, and those low-key Capone feels. But aside from that, really nothing much changed. Wasn't mind-blowing chapter, I don't think, mainly setup, but still very, very good. Got that One Piece fixed for my week. But anyway guys, let me know what you think. Let me know if you noticed anything that I missed. Just share your thoughts. Like the video if you like the video. Dislike the video if you dislike the video. Subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always guys, have a wonderful day.